Here's how to get a free Series S. The future of cloud gaming is here. And is Tiny Tina's Wonderlands worth $70? Let's discuss. So one of my most anticipated games this month was Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. I'm a big fan of the Borderlands series, so when this game came out, I was really excited. I waited a couple of days. I didn't play it at launch because I was so wrapped up in Elden Ring, But I'm kind of getting over that. I'm getting towards the end of Elden Ring, and I feel a little bit more comfortable trying out other games that are not Elden Ring. So I'm about 10 hours into Wonderlands, and I'm like level 14, level 15, around that area, and in that time already the writing for this game is a lot better than Borderlands 3. Now I know what you're gonna say, who cares about the writing, right? And of course there is a camp of people who play Borderlands who are just in it to shoot hordes of psychos, hordes of skags, all sorts of other creatures, and collect all the guns. And I feel like that's valid, right? But me, I'm kind of in the middle. I like the gameplay. I like just going around mindlessly shooting people and collecting loot. But I also like the lore. I like the characters. I like the story. For example, in Borderlands 1, there really wasn't a super heavy story in that game, but there was a lot of lore. I loved listening to Dr. Tannis' tapes. I loved listening to other people's tapes and just regular people in the Borderlands and what their life was like. In Borderlands 1, I played as a Siren, and my friend, he played as Roland, the soldier, and I spent a lot of time with Roland. We beat the game together, went adventuring throughout the Borderlands together, which made it very heartbreaking when a certain event happened in Borderlands 2. I won't spoil it for anyone, but that was pretty crazy to me. So I feel like, yes, at its core, Borderlands is a shoot and loot game, and that's what keeps a lot of people coming back, but I feel like there is room for a good story. Borderlands 2 was a great example of that. Handsome Jack was a great villain, and they had some really great story moments like New Haven floating in the sky because Lilith is charged up on iridium and she uses her power to like lift up the whole city. That was crazy. Borderlands 3 was great on the gameplay side, and it gave people what they wanted: more guns, more loot, more variety in that. The guns were crazy in that game, but the story was trash. The villains were not very good. The twins, who were like obsessed with like having viral videos being put out all the time, and they did things in the story that I feel like were just for the shock value and not entirely earned. As a Siren player, I was pretty pissed off because they did some really, I would say, not great things to these PCs that I had become very attached to. So Wonderlands, I feel like, does a good job of taking the gameplay elements from Borderlands 3, that the quality of life improvements that they implemented in that game, but having a better overall story than Borderlands 3. Not quite at Borderlands 2 level, but better than Borderlands 3. At the same time though, I thought it was weird how disconnected this Wonderlands game felt from the other Borderlands game. When Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, the DLC, came out for Borderlands 2, what I liked about it a lot was that they were taking characters that we already knew and implementing them in this D&D fantasy setting. And over in Wonderlands, there's really no recurring characters from the other Borderlands games outside of Tiny Tina herself, and Claptrap makes an appearance, but I haven't found any references to any of the other characters, which I thought was a missed opportunity for sure. That's not to say that the characters they introduce aren't good. For example, you got Will Arnett as the main bad guy, the Dragon Lord, Andy Sandberg as Valentine, Wanda Sykes as this little robot advisor person. Overall, great performances, great characters. Nice. I am made of land! Make sure you go on down to the merch shelf in the description or go to stayxboxready.com for your very own Maidenless t-shirt. If you use the code STAYREADY, you get 10% off your purchase. Another thing I thought was interesting was that you have the ability to make your own character now. Previously, you took over a PC that was already established, already had a name, their own backstory, their own character, but they had different abilities compared to the other characters. And on surface level, the character creation, I was like, this is pretty cool, but the more that I went through it, I was like, okay, this is pretty robust. I've seen people already make like Kratos, Shrek, Kanye West using the character creation that they provide you in Wonderlands. And on top of that, they offer 2 more classes out the gate. Usually in a standard Borderlands game, you get to choose between 4, and now they offer you 6 classes, and I thought that was pretty cool. I appreciate what they're starting to do with the melee weapons. So Borderlands, of course, is all about the guns, right, as a franchise, but there's always been kind of some melee elements involved. For example, in Borderlands 1, Brick, his action skill is that he punches people. And Borderlands 2, Krieg the Psycho, his action skill is that he takes out a buzzsaw and he goes around whacking people with it. And also in Borderlands 2, Zero, he has this ability where he can lunge. If you upgrade it a certain way, he can lunge at people with his katana from person to person and slicing them. So there's always been a melee element, but there hasn't been like full melee builds, I would say. But in this game, however, you can equip a melee weapon to your melee slot. Usually in past Borderlands games, you just have a standard melee attack, but in this game, you can equip like a sword or an axe or a claymore to your melee slot. And while it is a nice little change, I don't know how far people can really go with it. There are some interesting things I'm seeing. Reading into it more in Wonderlands, I had a weapon, it was a hammer, and when I looked at the stats, it said it does more damage depending on how many crossbow bolts are on a certain enemy. Cool, possible equipment synergy there. I have to have a specific weapon that's like a crossbow, I shoot them, and then if I whack them with this hammer, it does more damage, as opposed to just whacking them with a hammer or just shooting them with a crossbow individually. Again, I'm not too deep into it, so I don't know how far those mechanics can really go, but I thought it was an interesting twist. I'm playing right now as the Spore Guardian, which is like a toxic, like ranger archetype. I have this little like mushroom companion that follows me around everywhere, and he's great. He has this move where he farts, and it's a noxious cloud that erupts around him, and he aggroes everyone, so that's very helpful because I'm playing solo right now. Again, haven't gotten too deep into it, but I feel like the classes, they're pretty interesting. They're doing some different things. Usually in past Borderlands games, you have 3 different skill trees that you go through, but in this one you only have 1, but you do have the option to multi-class later in the game. I really like the overworld map. This substitutes usually in a Borderlands game when you're going in between areas, you gotta drive in this car, and the vehicle stuff in Borderlands I think was the weakest part of the games. So in Wonderlands, I really like the overworld map. First of all, funny, and second of all, it provides an interesting way to traverse 2 different areas without it being like you're going through like this whole different in-between zone. I also really like the setting. If you watch the channel, you know that I'm a fan of the fantasy genre. I like D&D, I like tabletop RPGs, and if you've ever run a D&D campaign, there is a lot of humor that you will find that will appeal to you, I would say. And especially with the settings and the game design, I think they do a great job. Walking around Brighthoof really gives me the feeling of like walking around a Renaissance fair, which I have done a lot. Me and my wife used to go to the PA Renaissance Fair every year, and having those feelings being evoked, walking around, seeing the tavern in town, and if you walk to the docks and look at the Brighthoof as a city from a distance, I'm like, whoa, this is like actually pretty legit, pretty detailed. It's really gorgeous to look at. The kind of poking fun at different fantasy tropes kind of reminds me of the original Bard's Tale game. It came out, it was playable on like PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1 era, I would say. It's kind of hard to explain it, but it gave me those vibes. And I feel like in this game, the side quests are a little bit beefier, I would say. I did this whole quest that was centered around helping this goblin liberation movement. It was called, the organization was called GTFO. It's like Goblins Together Fight Oppression. And I was going through that side quest, I was really having a good time. I became very interested in Jar's storyline, which was the little goblin revolutionary. And at the end of it all, I explored this whole area called Mount Craw or Mount Caw or something like that. And I was like, okay, and when I reached the end of that storyline, I was like, well, I should be pretty far. And I was like, wait, no, that was a side quest. And I can't remember a time in previous Borderlands games when I became that into a side quest. I don't know, I can't say if every side quest is to that level of the GTFO side quest, but I did enjoy the Goblin Revolutionary kind of thing. Is it worth $70 though? That's what I paid for the Xbox Series X version. They have a $60 version, but that's not optimized for the next gen consoles. And I feel like as Xbox fans, we've been pretty spoiled when it comes to that. We pay $60 for the game and we usually get the free upgrade. I would say that this game is worth like $40 to $60. I've heard that it's a little bit shorter than a standalone game. It's definitely bigger than the Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, but not as big as like Borderlands 3 was. And for me, I'd say, you know, it was worth it because I love Borderlands and I love the fantasy setting, I love the D&D shtick. But if you're not as really into that as me, I don't know if it would be worth the full $70 for you. But again, I haven't played all the way through it. I'm only about 9-10 hours in, level 14, 15, so take what I say with a grain of salt. So we all love free stuff, right? And especially free video game consoles. If someone were to walk up to me on the street and hand me a free video game console and say, have a great day, regardless of if it was a Switch Lite or PlayStation 4 or like an Xbox One X, I would be like, dope, this is awesome. And especially during times like this, where we are living through an unprecedented console and tech shortage, the likes of which we have never seen or experienced before, we gotta take every opportunity we can to get these next-gen consoles. Now, the Xbox Series S is a console that I have gone to bat for multiple times on this channel. I've been recommending that people buy it for at least like since November during Black Friday when it was on sale during that time. Considering the shortages that people are still experiencing for the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 consoles, I just think it's a great opportunity to get a next-gen console for cheap until you weather out this console shortage, until the world kind of rights itself. I don't know when that's gonna happen, but I feel like it's a great substitute, or maybe even your main console, until the Pro version comes out or until the next generation comes out. Now, the Series S goes on sale all the time, but here you can get a Series S for free, but there's a bit of a catch. LG is running a deal where if you buy one of their projectors, you get an Xbox Series S on the house. The deal applies to two projectors, the LG CineBeam HU715Q and the LG CineBeam HU710P. Now that sounds pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and having a projector can be pretty dope sometimes. My friend Sean, I've talked about him a little bit before on the channel, but he has a projector and we go over to his house and watch movies on his front lawn, and we make a whole thing out of it. It's really cool to have a projector sometimes, but these projectors in particular, they're nice. They're both 4K models, but they come in at like over $2,000 to $3,000. Now I know that sounds a little expensive, but if you were in the market for a projector, which could be pretty cool, this model right here, the LG CineBeam HU710P, it projects up to a 300-inch screen. And if you were to get an Xbox Series S thrown into that, for example, you could have some pretty sick split-screen LAN parties. You could play Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, 4-player, split screen on your Series S, up to on a 300-inch screen. Each one of you, if you were to do a 4-player split screen, would have literally your own 75-inch screen while you're playing with your bros. Yeah, you can go and like project it on the side of like a building or like a movie theater and just play whatever you want if you really wanted to. Now, I know this is pretty cost prohibitive. I know a lot of people are gonna say, no way am I gonna pay $2,000 for this projector just to get a Series S, but if you are in the market for a new TV, new projector, and you are also interested in getting an Xbox Series S, this is a great opportunity for you. So the other day I went to the beach and I posted about it on Twitter, on my Instagram, and I was showing off basically that I had my phone with my Razer Kishi controller, and I was showing off playing cloud gaming at the beach. And I know what people are thinking, like, if you go to the beach, you should do beach things, right? But I did do beach things, and here I gotta explain something. Here in California, the beaches are super, super cold, and the water is super, super cold out here. So, especially around this time, people don't really get into the water when they go to the beach. They go and do other things, play volleyball, play frisbee, hang out with your friends. We were playing giant Jenga, and I did all those things, and I was like, okay, time to take a break. I'm just gonna chill, sit on the beach, and I'm gonna play Young Souls on cloud gaming. And honestly, even though my service was kind of crappy at the beach, the game ran function pretty well. Not perfectly, but pretty well, which is a significant improvement versus other times when I've tried to play cloud gaming. I know that experience is probably not the same for everyone, right? I know a lot of people are gonna be in the comments being like, what? Cloud gaming sucks for me still. I don't like it. Boo cloud gaming. But me personally, I feel like cloud gaming, if done right, could be Xbox's X factor. A lot of X's in that sentence. I know a lot of people, when Google Stadia came out and eventually quote unquote failed, they had a lot to say about it, they had a lot of opinions, but I feel like Google Stadia, even though they didn't reach the heights, the lofty ambitions that they had set out for themselves, they had a solid idea. I feel like people are game to play video games in that way, without hardware, just on a specific device and streaming it to that device. That becomes even more relevant, like I said, during a time when there's console shortages. Not everyone can get their hands on the latest Xbox, on the latest PlayStation, on tech in general. So yeah, it would be kind of cool for people who are interested in playing Xbox games but can't get their hands on a new Xbox consoles, whether that be for financial reasons or supply reasons, to have the opportunity to play those games. Now we know that Xbox has been working pretty diligently to upgrade the cloud gaming experience. They had an iOS update which improved performance of cloud gaming on iPhones and other iOS devices. They also upgraded the hardware that it runs on. It was previously running on Xbox One S hardware, powering the cloud or whatever you want to call it, and they switched it to Xbox Series X hardware, which allowed them to up the frames per second to 60 rather than 30. And they recently worked with Valve to bring Xbox cloud gaming to Steam Decks. So overall, Microsoft, they're putting in work on this Xbox cloud gaming. They're showing interest in bringing that up to speed and making it a real pillar of the Xbox ecosystem. And this past Friday on March 25th, Microsoft officially discussed its Xbox Game Studios Publishing cloud gaming division at GDC 2022. This division of the Xbox Publishing Group is working on cloud native games. Now there's some pretty interesting things to come out of this presentation. For example, these cloud native games would be even slightly different from streaming a game using Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, and the fact that they would be entirely processed server side and then streamed to whatever device that you have. Kim Swift, who is the head of the cloud gaming division for Xbox Game Studios Publishing, is a veteran game designer who has worked on a couple of games you might have heard of, including Portal and Left 4 Dead. She used to work for Stadia as a game designer, but they said, you know what, we're not gonna make our own games, we're gonna leave those plans behind. So Microsoft scooped her up back in 2021. She said, we believe that cloud gaming has a huge potential upside for reach and accessibility, which I agree with. And the more devices that you can get your games played on, the better it is for your gaming division. We see this to a lesser extent on like all these mobile games. They're not tied to a specific console, a specific device. Well, sometimes there are games that are specific to iOS versus Android, but not too much, not the popular ones. And they make a ton of money, and that's what Microsoft wants at the end of the day. They want more people to play their games so that they can get more money from this gaming division. And these early stage cloud native games, they're probably not gonna be like the big open world blockbuster AAA games that we've seen other studios pump out. I mean, you gotta understand, like a game, let's say like, I don't know, like GTA or Cyberpunk, games that have like hugely dense crowds and a lot of things going on and are being generated as you're going out to the world. I can see how that could put a lot of stress on a game that's entirely being processed on a server and then being streamed to you, rather than being processed on hardware that's physically right in front of you. Either way, I think this is the beginning of something that could turn out to be really cool, not just for Microsoft, but for the future of gaming in general. But I know a lot of people have their suspicions. Xbox and making their own studios in the past, it's kind of been like, I don't know, and a lot of people have been pointing at the initiative and saying like, look at the initiative, Xbox tried to make a studio from the ground up and it failed because a lot of the people left. I think that is kind of an overreaction, I would say, me personally. I feel like Perfect Dark is gonna be fine. Yes, there were some disagreements of like the founding members of the initiative and the direction it was going in. But again, I think it was an overreaction, and I don't think we should look at this new cloud gaming division, these people who are developing cloud-specific games, I don't think we should look at them with skepticism. I'm optimistic, but I'm an optimistic guy. People are gonna say what they want. Haters are gonna hate. But overall, I'm excited for it.